Hey there, just a quick reminder we have a mentorship program if you're looking for personalized coaching and mentorship to help guide you to the next level of your interior design business, whatever that might look like for you, whether it's processes and procedures or what services to offer to how to incorporate wellness, intention, or spirituality into your projects. Come join us over at designcoven.com/join. Or if you're just in search to connect with other like-minded interior designers, you can join our free community, also located at designcoven.com/join. Hello, listeners. I'm so honored to have our guest today, which is Ben Warfield of Mithras Candle Company. Ben Warfield is a researcher and maker of light. He has been a key member of the Light Research Program at Jefferson University for over a decade, contributing to the study of biological effects of light on humans for private companies such as Philips, Panasonic, and Robern, as well as national and international governmental agencies such as NASA and the Department of Energy. Ben also explores the connections between light and health as CEO of the Philadelphia-based Mithras Candle Company. Together with his partner Sochi, Mithras focuses on sustainability, philanthropy, and history, centering on beeswax in particular. Mithras makes candles that awaken our connection to the ancient world and celebrate spirit and community. In our conversation, we dive into the connection of science and the ancient ones with our ancestors. We talk about technology of light and how it's connected to these ancient spaces. We discuss beeswax and the human circadian rhythm system, as well as some tips and tricks on how to keep our candles in the best condition. And with that, let me know what you think about our episode, and we'll get to it. You're listening to the Holistic Interior Design Podcast. This is a podcast that guides you as a new or inspiring independent interior designer navigating your entrepreneurial path. Here, with my over 20 years experience, I will share my holistic approach to design with intention and ancient practices, including feng shui, all incorporating mind, body, and spirit into my design projects. You will also learn from seasoned interior designers as they give strategies and insight of how they built their businesses and continue to work in the field. Together, we will discover supportive trade partners, new ideas, creatives, and inspiring artists from around the world. I am your host, Rachel Lorraine Crawford. Hello, welcome to episode 10. I am so excited to have Ben with us from Mithras Candle. I've been a huge fan of these gorgeous beeswax candles. They're like, when I opened up my the box and I had all of them in there, and you just touch them and they're just like so delicate and decadent, and just like it's just like this beautiful frosting of wax like poured all over it. It's just so pretty. I want to hug them and like sleep with them and all the things, and they're just so special. So so
thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you for that praise.
Yes. I mean, you could just tell like from photos before I even touched them, like how magical and how enriched with love they are. Because, these things, all things have these auras and these spirits about them, and you can really feel it when you even just seeing it in a photo. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and ring our bell. I'm going to light our candle just to set our ambiance. And then we'll take a look and see what we're drinking. We'll pull a card, and then we'll get into this. So just to kind of get us into the mindful space, taking a beautiful breath. I'll light this candle, which I'm so excited for. Pretty.
That's beeswax for you. It takes a long time to light.
So good.
It's a very high melting point.
Yes. And just like watching it last night, I was just staring into these candles for about an hour. I mean, it's like a whole meditation, and it just gets you into the moment, and it makes you slow down, right? Like beeswax takes a while to light. So it's like you're like looking at this little flicker, and then like, is it going to catch? Is it going to catch? And then once it does, it's magical.
Yeah, it slowly illuminates.
Mhm.
It's really nice. I was going to say on your comment on meditation as looking at the candle flame.
Yeah.
That's a whole form of meditation called Tritaka.
Okay.
So
Amazing. We did,
it's like form of yoga. Yeah.
we did in our Patreon group, we did a candle gazing meditation. I think it was last August.
Excellent.
Yeah, connecting with fire. But you know what I did notice when I was staring last night is that your flame has like a violet color in it, and I've never seen that before. It's like a purple. Versus like I've seen the blue like on the mattress. It's like very blue, and this has just like a purple violet color to it. It's incredible. Anyway.
Oh wow! I have to confess, I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, it's insane. If you like stare into it, there's at the very base, it's violet. It's purple. It's not blue. It's a very pretty purple.
Wow.
Yeah, it's magic. So cool.
Our bees are doing something.
They're doing something. I don't know what, but it's got something juicy in there. Okay, so let's. I'm curious. What do you got in your brew? What's happening over there?
So, I have to confess, it's not very exciting. The teas I tend to go for, especially this time of year on the East Coast, it's very cold and gloomy here. As we wrap up winter, we just can't wait for spring. And I tend to drink peppermint tea. So this is an organic peppermint. And I also like Tulsi Rose is good too. I find myself drinking Tulsi Rose to help with the heart chakra this time of year.
That's fantastic. So I've got
what are you drinking?
I've got a tea made by Paru, of course, because she's my favorite. So Amy at Paru is a local person here that does magical teas, and we were getting together in, I think it was 2019, and we would create moon circles together, and we would infuse, like create tea in this big circle that was connected to the moon. So this one's called New Moon in Leo, and it's got elderflower, rooibos, lemon peel, orange peel, and marigold. And I was inspired to pull this one just because of your logo and the lion and, you know, that sun energy. And I thought that was like...
Yeah. It looks like lion's mane, sort of. It's got that energy and that color.
It's so rad. So anyway, that your candle inspired all of that. That I'm drinking.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's so much intention that could be put into everything that we do. For me, it's about, you know, connecting with ritual, looking at things in our spaces. I'm the type of person that just goes to the next thing. And I'm I feel like I'm on fire constantly, and I'm just, you know, running forward, and tea helps me slow down. But also like thinking about like just tapping into intuition, like what does my body want right now? Like what tea am I being called to drink? And that helps me slow down. And then, of course, having to do the water and the loose leaf. And then I'm like, you know, staring into the tea leaves. And so it's a whole thing.
Are you a fire sign by chance?
No, I'm all
that
air.
You felt like you were on fire a lot.
Yeah, but I do have a Leo moon.
Okay.
I have a Leo moon. But it's all air.
Okay.
There's
right.
I have no earth at all. Like it's non-existent in my chart.
So the air oxygen fuels the fire.
Yes. It's like nonstop. Go. So I have to have like these little tools to help me stay in the moment. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is I'm pulling cards because I love to pull cards. I usually will pull cards whenever I'm doing like a Reiki session or I'm doing a home clearing or, you know, just on Instagram in general. So I'm using the Ink Witch Tarot deck by Eric Mele. And he has come on to the Patreon as well and got to share his work. And it's all these gorgeous like watercolor pieces.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful.
Yeah, he's pretty rad. So I thought I would connect us with his cards. Just see what we've got for today. So this card's going to be for anyone that watches the podcast or listens to it. This is your card. And then for us, it's just kind of getting us connected with some ancient wisdom or some information from our guides that are wanting to connect with us. And this is the Knight of Swords. So beautiful. So dinosaurs for me is that energy of like going into battle and just like charging in and just moving so fast. It's this fast air energy of just like the space of the mind, logic, connecting. And what I'm also hearing is like connecting with Aquarian energy, which is, the energy of connecting the world together. They're the inventors, they're the ones that are coming up with new concepts. They're always outside the box, like they're, 10 steps ahead. So I feel like even talking about lighting today, that is like a technology, right? It's a logic, it's a thing, it's a new way of connecting and doing. And then we have the crow there, of course, which is all the magic.
It's awesome. The crow is sort of the symbol of one of my spiritual teachers. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, they are here definitely to connect with us. So I would love to know, I know you're not here locally in San Diego, Encinitas, which is where I'm at. I'm on the West Coast. And so Ben, you're on the East Coast. So tell me about like, what does home mean for you right now? And what does that look like?
Yeah. Home has transformed so totally for me in just the last year. For a while, I was living for many years. Mithras Candle started in a bedroom, and then it moved into a basement workshop. So it took up most of the whole basement of my old row home.
Okay.
And I went through a lot of life transformations at once, just a total midlife explosion awakening, like spiritually. And my former marriage ended. My mom had a stroke. Mithras really took off. Like all these things sort of were just like a lot of transformational energy.
Wow.
And I found myself meeting my partner Sochi, who is a practicing witch for decades. And I told her, look, I'm really interested in this stuff. Pam Grossman, who you might know from the scene of the Witch Way podcast, she was a friend that sort of encouraged Mithras to grow and helped us grow. And I became really interested in the esoteric. And when I met her, she was just someone who her ultimate goal was making home. And it was something that I always wanted to make. I know, sorry, this is a bit of a long-winded answer.
I love it.
It's like something that's seriously on my mind right now. And the home I was in was not really true to my authentic self. And I think that was part of what I was experiencing. And I met this amazing partner in like all aspects of life. And we were like, whoa, you want to make a home? Like, I want to make a home. Let's just go for it and just really do something a little crazy and also very courageous, know, and brave. And we didn't know that the pandemic was coming. This was like a year before the pandemic. And we just went for it in like every aspect. We were like, let's try to merge our households. Let's try to find a big, crazy fixer-upper. So now we're living, for me, home it's so different than like I was in a tiny, I don't want to say tiny, but it was like a 1,400 square foot row home, pretty standard in Philadelphia.
Okay.
2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, basement, nice little yard with a garden. Now Sochi and I have like manifested this 8-bedroom colonial, and it's us and her 2 children from her previous marriage. Now we have a baby on the way who's coming in a month. And my 2 elderly parents are also living us. We have elders with us, and we have a dog and a cat. So it's just like a wild commune sitcom in Mount Airy neighborhood of Philadelphia. Wow. And we're just going for it.
You've got an abundance of life happening.
Yeah. So it's just, one of the things we're focusing on now, specifically, if people want to like something specific to focus on, is that we're building an ancestor wall in our new home because it feels really important as a way to integrate. So we have a picture of like the previous homeowner who was there for like 80 years. And Mount Airy is really cool because it's a historically very diverse neighborhood. It's one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the country. There's a lot of Black and Jewish families that purposefully decided to keep it integrated for like 60 years. And so we were honoring the family that was before us. And we're also honoring like my history and her family history and my parents, like everyone that lives in the house. If they have an ancestor that's important to them, it goes on the wall.
Oh my goodness.
So that's something that we're doing at the home, which is really awesome. And just having so much space to work with. I was just talking to Sochi this morning. It's kind of mind-blowing. to feel so expansive and to feel like there are so many possibilities. And before we were always in tiny spaces, so it was really easy to be like, bam, bam, bam,
Yeah.
let's knock this out. Like in 1 year or 2 years, you're all done and everything's great. But with this kind of space, it's like, whoa, it's a marathon. You have to pace yourself. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Well, you
yeah,
will, if you're open to it, I would love to share a photo of that ancestor wall with all the
yeah,
listeners.
yeah,
Just to
absolutely. Yeah,
like,
when it's done, I'll send it to you.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
for
would be
sure.
amazing. Just to kind of, because and we'll talk in the podcast later too about the direction of the ancestors in feng shui is the east. So when we come into that episode, we'll be talking just about this, creating this ancestor wall or this altar or this thing that's in connection to that direction, whether it's in the room or
Wow.
it's in the house or whatever it is.
They're all looking east at the sunrise.
Are
I don't know.
they?
I don't know which direction it works. Is it like the wall has to face the east, or is the wall in the east?
Usually
Like,
it's
is
the
it like
wall in the
stage left or
east,
stage
but
right?
right, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But I love that
Okay.
they're watching the sun rise. That they're
Yeah.
facing that direction. And for me, it's all about the intention behind whatever it is that we're
Okay.
bringing in. So it's not like you have to do it exactly like this. It's like what makes the most sense, and how does it flow with the rest of our house, and where
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So I'm not so rigid when it comes to certain things.
That's nice. It's nice to know there's some wiggle room because that's
Yes.
where the fireplace is. And otherwise, we'd have to put the couch in front of the fireplace.
And that's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like each space
Be
is,
nice and toasty. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I know you'll be burning up just sitting there, but yeah, each place is so different. And
Yeah, totally.
so it's like when we come in and we take a look at it, I'm like, okay, well, what makes the most sense here? And does this feel good? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, okay, that's what we're doing. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. We'll send a photo. It's going to be a process.
Yeah.
I imagine like a couple months to really finish
Yeah.
with everything that's going on.
Amazing. And I love that you are speaking of your elders also living with you. My mom just moved in with us at we have a little guest house down below, and that was really unexpected, but lovely. She's actually getting out of a horrible relationship. So it's nice to be able
Good.
to, support her in a way, and to have her integrated with we have 2 boys, and so it's just cool, like having all these different.
Congrats. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so neat. So I'm glad that you had mentioned
It's
that.
so nice to have. Yeah. How old are your boys?
9 and 11.
Oh, okay. So it is nice to still have grandmom's help with.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's always great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were creating, so how did you connect with candles and the work of the bees, and how did all of this come about? Like what was the catalyst or the inspiration behind it all?
It's sort of a wild story. My background originally, I have an undergraduate degree in fine art from the University of the Arts here in Philadelphia. It used to be the College of Art and Design. And I sort of hung out there and was interested in anything relating to imaging. So like photography, film, did some animation, and I've always loved music. I think back then my real goal was to do ambient music and film score music. And but I actually ended up hanging out towards the end with a lot of graphic designers who did a lot of imaging work, and I got familiar with Photoshop and things like that. I had a few years of just sort of trying to have a record label and things like that, as you do in your 20s.
Yeah.
And I ran into somebody that worked at the Light Research Program at Jefferson University, which is a medical school here in Philadelphia. And they were like, you should come in and check out this study that we're doing. We stare at this colored light in the middle of the night. It's really trippy. And, they pay you money to do it. So I went and I actually did the study. And while I was there, I made friends with the people who were running it just by being curious, like I am as an air sign, as a Gemini.
Yeah.
And I found out that they were big space nerds like I was. And the study was actually for NASA. It was a precursor study to look at the different effects of colored light on the human sleep hormone melatonin. So even though I had an arts background, I ended up starting to freelance for them to do imaging work. So like processing graphs and figures, helping Dr. Brainerd, who ran the whole lab, convert his old Kodachrome slides into, digital stuff. He's a whole interesting character. He's sort of a mentor to me, both in the scientific world, but also spiritual, because he considers himself a research scientist. He's very well known in the field of photobiology,
Okay.
which is how light affects humans and other mammals. And but he's also a mystic, and he studied at the Edgar Cayce Research Society in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He's had some profound spiritual experiences, and he helped to start the Yoga Research Society at Jefferson, which at the time was very frowned upon. Yoga was not accepted in the 80s and the 90s the way it is now by the medical, the medical community, mainstream science. He even had to change the name of it for a while to study it into mindfulness-based meditation, even though it was traditionally yoga. And now it's widely accepted, but I just think of him as very brave, and I feel very lucky and or guided by spirit into where I've been. And he was the one that sort of got me interested in light, not just scientifically, but as this sort of metaphysical concept. And as we were studying, it's so ironic, we were studying the cutting edge of light for space travel. How does, the astronauts go around the Earth, like when they're in the space station, every 45 minutes, they have a sunrise and a sunset. So their circadian rhythms are really disrupted. So we were trying to use light to sort of simulate an Earth day and sort of ground them more into the cycles that they're more used to. And while we were doing this, I sort of I don't know why, but we got to talking about ancient light sources. And I was curious about how humans evolved. I'm like, wow, if electric light affects us like this, I wonder how firelight does. And then I fell down a candle hole, sort of just studying. I studied campfire effects and gas lamps and everything. And I found candles, and specifically they were like a new lighting technology. I don't really think of them like that, but lighting technology kind of went from fire, which torches, to then tallow candles, which was animal fat or animal fat lamps. And then candles were sort of a new technology. Only about 2,000 years ago, they were invented. And specifically, it was when they started finding materials that were like waxes, where the fats could sort of become more solid at room temperature. So specifically beeswax. The only problem was that at the time, beeswax was very expensive because it took so much manual labor to get a small amount of it. So your average hive gives you only about 2 pounds a year. So it was a material reserved for the sort of elite class and for special occasions like temple ceremonies and things. But I found in my research on candles, I heard about this ancient Roman mystery cult that worshipped a god called Mithras. So Mithras used to be a Persian god. Mithras was female, and she was sort of the goddess of light and renewal. And then the Persian Empire interacted with the Romans, and they when she was Persian, she was Mithra. So Mithra became Mithras, and it became masculine. But they were in these underground temples in this sort of mystery cult with different hierarchies, not dissimilar to sort of the Masons. But they burned a lot of torches, and the air was very sooty and just smelled bad. I mean, the tallow reeds at the time everything smelled like French fries.
Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden beeswax comes into the scene, and it smells great. It is not very sooty, and it lasts for a really long time. So it was this great new lighting technology for worshiping different deities in underground temples. And that's kind of stuck with me, and that's sort of where our brand came from.
Beautiful. And then
I wanted to invoke this connection for our customers with with the ancient,
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have this ancient feel to them. Again, it's like connecting to the ancestors and connecting to the fire and the light that they would have seen at that time. And just turning off all the lights at night and just connecting with that fire. It's just a way to reconnect with those ancient roots, and another practice that is just so magical. So tell me, how did the lion and the icon and all of that come to be? And what any of you have? I don't have the label, but if you can show us what's on there, because it's
sure.
itself is
so here
insane.
we have one of our black candles. Yeah, it's a lion here, not dissimilar to what you might see with Leo, and that's actually important. And then there's a star above, and the lion has it's hard to see here, but it has a little bee in its mouth. And so to the worshipers of Mithras, the constellations were really important. So Leo was one of the constellations that was the ceiling of the Mithraic temples were like planetariums.
Okay.
And each constellation had spiritual significance to them, as well as sort of relating to the steps that they would take as a student in the cult. They would work their way through 7 tiers. And one of the tiers, I believe it's tier 4, was Leo. And when I was first studying Mithras, there was a lot of iconography to choose, but that was the one that called to me, which is interesting because my sun's sign is Gemini and my moon, I think, is Sagittarius. I don't really have a lot of Leo, but I was just really drawn to that symbol. Yeah, so that symbol called to me. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it was the bee, because it made me sort of brought everything around back to beeswax. And the bees were a sacred symbol to the Romans and to a lot of ancient cultures because of honey, and because they symbolized the goddess of renewal, I believe. Was it Miel? Was that her name? I can't remember. But there were gods and goddesses associated with bees, and they've just been sacred to us for thousands of years, and it just made sense.
Yeah. So did you see the lion with the bee in its mouth elsewhere, or was that something that you kind of put together?
The star being above it, I added. It was just the lion with the bee in its mouth was from, when I first started out, I was trying to find all the material I could on the Mithraic cults. And the only thing I could really come across with a high enough quality was this 17th century scan of a 17th century manuscript. And that was one of the illustrations in it. And it was talking about one of the tiers of the Mithraic cults. And so that's where it came from. And then we added the star.
I love it. Oh, it's just so beautiful. Yeah. And I just love the simplicity of it. It speaks volumes just by looking at it and connecting with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys like totally killed it on the branding.
Cool. I like to think that the lion's not hunting the bee, because I guess if you really get in there, it's a little gruesome maybe, but that, I don't know. I like to think of it in a more positive light.
Yeah.
Some people like to get really goth with it. They're like, the lion's totally eating the bee.
Maybe it's just holding it in its mouth and he's just like, playing with it a little bit.
Just to speak to bees a little bit more, as I came more into candle technology, I found that beeswax was sort of something that's been around for thousands of years, and it's always sort of be considered the best for candles because one, it's renewable because it comes from bees. So you can work with bees as a bee farmer, work in symbiosis with them. Now, granted, some people have feelings of wild bees versus domesticated. The honeybees we have today are domesticated animals. So some people have feelings about that. Vegans, I totally understand it. But if you don't feel that way, bees, we've been working with bees as humans for thousands of years, and it's a great renewable source to make a light from. And though candlelight does emit carbon into the air, it's offset by using it as a renewable, sustainable material. So that's something that really called to me. That's why I love beeswax.
Yeah. And so are you working directly with bee farmers?
Yeah. So we work with bee farmers. It took years of doing research, and we basically went around to beekeeper conferences or symposiums, I guess you'd call them, in the area, in the mid-Atlantic region. And that's where everyone gathers. So everyone who has bees, who is serious about it, gathers there. And we just went up to them and were like, who does your wax? A lot of them don't do wax extraction because it's such a big step after extracting the honey. It's sort of an afterthought. And to really gather it and filter it takes a lot of time and effort. But we did find some people, and that's who we're working with. And it's always an ongoing process because there's a lot more candle makers now than when we started 7 years ago. And beeswax is a hot commodity.
Yeah.
So it's like anything else. It's just, you have to know your source and develop a relationship with your sources and nurture it.
Yeah. Relationships are huge. And then this year being a lover's year with the tarot and just like, even in my practice as a designer, my relationships I've been building for over 17 years. And it's like, I have my people that I connect with and who will bend over backwards when, working with me. And so that's huge. I just love that you have, solidified your relationships with these beekeepers, and knowing that, this thing with beeswax is such a hot thing, but you've created this beautiful culture with the people that you work with. There's meaning behind it. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. I think there's a thing happening in candle making right now where there's a lot of throwing around of the term natural materials, like natural waxes. And if there's just something I could mention right now, a lot of people use soy, and I don't want to get down on soy. I'm happy that any people are making candles and they're successful and having a small business and making money for their family. But soy wax is it's not really a natural wax. It's actually kind of paraffin by a different name. So everyone knows that soybeans are one of the most popular crops. They're sort of a monocultural crop, and a lot of U.S. farmers grow them. So it's a great material to get that's made in our country. But soybean wax is fats from the soybean, and they don't just burn. You can't just like pour soybean oil that you extract and light it like into a lamp and light it on fire. What they actually do is take the soybean fats and they put it into a high pressure chamber, and they inject all kinds of petroleum distillate gases like butane and hexane that are already processed out of oil extraction. And then at that high heat and high temperature, it bonds with the fats in the soybean, and that's how they make the soy wax. So it's not natural really at all. And it was a wax that we started working with, and because we get a lot of requests for scented candles, and beeswax is so dense that it holds onto scents really tight. So it's not the best for scented candles. But we had to make a really difficult decision to cut out all our scented candles at least and not use soy wax, because once we found out what it actually is, where it comes from, even though it hit our bottom line a little bit, it's just more important to us to work with something that's renewable and sustainable. So that is one of the challenges I see, like moving forward with businesses, is like, as we strive to be more sustainable and more renewable, we run into limits, because the natural world has limits, like human beings have limits. It's something that isn't often discussed in capitalism. It's like everything is limitless. As long as there's a demand for your candles, keep making them. So I just think it's something to talk about, something that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I remember just working with beeswax, as in my own ritual, I'll get beeswax sheets locally here in San Diego. There's a place that they harvest their own wax from their bees, and he's been doing it for, I don't know how long, decades. And so I'll, make ritual beeswax candles, but there's something, extremely special about touching the wax and letting it get into your hands. And I've just been anointing them with essential oils and herbs and creating in that way. And there's just something so different.
Yeah, we encourage people to do that. There's so much you can do with a candle, even if it's just a simple beeswax pillar. You can anoint it with oils. You can anoint it with dried herbs. You can carve into it with candle carving tools, put sigils on it. There's so much you can do once customers get it. We're definitely interested in that stuff, but it's just sort of a time trade-off of
for sure.
How much do we want to do to a candle before we
But I was looking at your Instagram, and you had those tapered ones with all the herbs and stuff on it. Can you tell me about those magical things that you make? I mean, that to me, I was like, whoa, that's like a whole nother level.
Oh yeah. So sometimes what we will do is, for special giveaways and just events, we'll go a little bit further and do something like that. I think the ones that you were referring to were, I'm looking around to see if I have any here. I don't think I do. I think they're at home. But were the witch tapers, I believe, which was mullein stalks dipped in beeswax? Yeah, those are a huge hit. I think next year we have a source of like wild harvested mullein that we can rely on, and we do a limited amount of that. But yeah, that's huge. The witch tapers, also known as hag's tapers, were really popular in Eastern Europe and in Northern Europe around Samhain, because that's when the mullein is starting to dry out. So mullein is an awesome herb. It's great for respiratory illness, and it really was really interesting. A lot of the herbalists I know were talking about how mullein was just going ham in the US and North America this year when COVID hit. And then they were like, this is like nature's response to knowing that this thing is needed. This herb is needed, which kind of blew my mind.
That's insane.
I was seeing it everywhere, and I still kind of am. And we just, when the stalks get dry, you cut them off, and they can be tiny or they can be really big, and they soak the beeswax up almost like a sponge. And you just light them on fire like a tiki torch and just stick them right in the ground. And they're great for outdoor ceremony. If you burn them indoors, they definitely should be smaller, and they should be in some kind of like container with stones or sand or something that's fire retardant, because they get wild. They are a torch.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just looking at those, I'm like, oh my God, they're just like pulling me in, and like, holy crap, that's awesome. Um,
It's so fun to make stuff like that. Again, it's like there's limits on what you can harvest sustainably. And so,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, that's the goal of it, right? Is to be sustainable and to connect, and then just show that, that nature
Yep.
only creates certain things at certain times of the year, and like you appreciate them and you celebrate them, and then, we move on to the other things, and there's so much magic in the mundane, in the simplicity, and I love how pure candles are. It's just that purity. It's that solid core of just like, to me, it's almost like just taking a piece of the sun or a light and the bee magic, and that's all you need. But we don't need to like complicate it with all these different scents and all these other things. So I just really appreciate that for sure, and what you
Yeah.
guys are doing.
Thank you. Yeah. It's sort of that. I don't know. I think of it as more of an Eastern ideal of just like do a couple things really well instead of trying to do everything.
Oh yeah, no, I
That's
feel it.
what we
I'm
strive
like,
for.
yeah, I'm like all over.
Yeah.
So it's like zero in, refocus, reconnect, and then yeah, let's do it right.
Yeah.
And the first time. But I wanted to go back to you talking about NASA and getting those astronauts back into their circadian rhythms. And I feel like I'm doing that, in
Yeah.
homes and with lighting in general. And lighting is a big question that I get from everybody about, like, how do I light my home properly? And, all of us hate the sort of fluorescent blue light. And I'm in California, and the laws here are so strict because everything has to be energy efficient, and I can't even buy certain bulbs
Yeah.
in California. Like, I'll connect with
Yep.
these companies, and it's against the law for them to even sell it to me. So like, if we want to get around any of that, there's
Isn't
things that
that
we have to do.
wild?
Yeah.
I keep worrying about candles getting regulated, and I'm just crossing my fingers because I obviously I believe in health and energy efficiency. It's so important. I believe in climate change. We need to move towards energy efficiency
Hmm.
and renewables. At the same time, fluorescent lights really suck. Most LEDs that are affordable kind of suck. And I'll be specific about when I use that word, what I mean by that. But they're very blue and red. And if you're someone who grew up as we did with incandescent lights, they're so warm and they don't flicker like other lights do. And that's really nice. And it's very close, or at least closer than other light sources like LED and fluorescent, to fire, which is what we evolved with for hundreds of thousands of years as humans. So not having a light source that's warm is feels very unnatural to
Yeah.
our bodies.
And the same thing with like when I'm speccing lights, dependent on where these lights are going and how they're being used. And I'm just thinking about lights, and we use lights more in the evening, right? So we're coming down. So for me, it's about connecting with the warmer light. And I'll always tell people, my ideal is a 2700 Kelvin light temperature versus a 3000 up to 5, which is like really, really blue.
That is so awesome. I feel like we're best friends now. That's also my favorite. That's
Yeah.
also my favorite color temperature.
Yeah, it just has that warmness to it. But I will say that they are coming out with some new LEDs that are much more advanced, and they also have a thing called warm dim. So with warm dim, it is about 2 times, 3 times the amount of money as the other ones. But basically, as it dims to a warm light versus just slowly giving you less of the blue light. It actually dims down to a really warm glow.
Yep.
Which is super rad.
This is blowing my mind because I remember starting at the lab 20 years ago, and I was literally in the US laboratory, Dr. Brainerd's light research program, where he made the discovery. I haven't really gotten into this, but it's all this research and all the changes that are happening in lighting come back to this discovery made in our laboratory in 2001. The paper was published in the Journal of Neuroscience, that there is another photoreceptor in the back of the eye that was before that point undiscovered, and it's called the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell. And that just means it's a cell in the back of your retina, just like your cones, which see color. You have red, green, and blue cones, and 4% of women have an extra cone that let them see between green and red, and it makes them awesome color discriminators.
Wow.
So women always trust women with your color choices.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah.
because
And men tend to be more colorblind too.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what I was just about to say is a lot of the clients that I'm working with are men and they are colorblind. Like a lot of them are colorblind and they're just
Yeah.
like, I just need you to
Yeah.
tell me like, does this and this go? And can you just put this
Awesome.
together?
Yes, I love it. Just tell us what to do.
Yeah, they're like, what color is this?
And yeah. So that's the cell is really it's mind blowing. They basically brought in eight or 16 subjects, 8 male identifying, 8 female identifying subjects, and they looked at the whole rainbow, the whole spectrum in the human visible range, which is from about 380 nanometers, which is what we perceive as the edge of violet, so ultraviolet. And what's interesting is when you're a child, pre-puberty, you actually can see further into the ultraviolet range. So something I like to, it's a little tidbit I like to tell people, but when you were a child, if you remember colors seeming brighter and more intense and saturated, that was because your eyes could literally see further into the ultraviolet range. And then when we hit puberty, our lenses discolor a little bit because of the hormonal change, and we lose that ability. So colors become a little bit more desaturated. So,
oh my God.
You can, your brain still remembers. Isn't that mind-blowing?
That's amazing.
So, but yeah, we brought in healthy adults. So they were at 380, sort of on the edge of ultraviolet, up to 780, which is on the edge of infrared. And they had, I think it was something like 16 different colors that they looked at. And they found, and then they took blood samples before and after to look at melatonin, which is the sleep hormone. So this study happened at night when people would normally be asleep.
Wow.
And they looked at the sleep hormone and they found that the blue light actually suppressed the sleep hormone at a high enough intensity. And that's what they were like, wait, none of the red, green, and the blue cones don't affect melatonin. And this has nothing to do with the rods. The rod cells peak at green. So like nothing we know peaks at blue. So there has to be some kind of cell in there that peaks at blue. And then they found that it connects to the circadian system and it has a whole crazy pathway, like an ancient pathway that goes through your spine and directly up into your pineal gland in the center of your brain, which the pineal gland has a lot of mystical significance as your third eye, you know, if you've heard it talk about that. But it is the gland that secretes our sleep hormone, melatonin. So then we were like, wow, blue light is everywhere at night. This has to be affecting us. So then we worked with other labs who did studies on light at night affecting increasing risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer and nurses and people who like third shift workers. So now we understand light. You know, when 25 years ago or when we were kids, light was just something you turned on and off and it was like, I can see where it's dark. And now we know that light is like a drug and it affects our sleep cycles, it affects our moods, you know, our ability to learn better, all kinds of stuff. And so we're seeing it finally after 2 decades of me being in this field. It's just trickling down everywhere. It's on our phones. Our phones change color at night to help pull out the blue. And you're talking about warm dim, and all this technology is based on this research that we did 2 decades ago. So that's about as long as it takes for something to go from a tiny research lab out into the world. But it's amazing. And what is really cool to bring it back around is it's just bringing us back to what our ancestors already knew, which is that, and also what we're adapted to, which is we're adapted to fire at night. Like things that have blue light is blue sky. And when our body sees blue sky, it's daytime. So we want warm colors at night. We want dim light at night, stuff that we're adapted to. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love how full circle that went with you, like in all these research labs and doing all this work. And then here I am, like taking that technology and putting it into
exactly.
homes
And the designers are running with it and you're doing beautiful things. I've seen just beautiful spaces and they're becoming more natural in a way. They're intelligent. They're simulating day during the day and simulating more warmer kind of firelight or candlelight at night. And, you know, that's just sort of gets me back into my obsession of candles. So maybe someday we'll work on LED lighting. We'll do like a Mithras candle, but it will have an LED light in it or something. Some people live in condos and they can't burn candles.
Yeah. Well, you know, they have like those battery ones where they have this flicker that like the light reflects on the flicker and it moves, which.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Or they use like a little fabric that's blowing or something. Yeah, it's cool.
It's pretty funny. And same thing with like.
We'll probably just make the real one.
But it's in those places that it's like, we can't have fire in here. And I'm like, it drives me crazy.
I know. Yeah. And again, it speaks to the regulations and I totally understand why they're there. So Yeah, I don't know. We'll just adapt if we have to. If we have to start making half candles, half LED lights,
Hopefully that
we'll do it.
won't ever happen.
Yeah.
God, it's just amazing. And I just love connecting with this fire element and these candles. And like I said, it's just bringing it into our homes. To me, is just so important to create these ambiances and these spaces that are so sacred. And, when you have something like your candles, speaking of, you had a black candle there, which
Yep.
and you're dyeing that with
Yeah, so this is
natural.
a vegetable-based dye, and it actually came about because of your state's awesome and strict environmental standards. So candle dyes in the US up until about 4 years ago were used petroleum extracts like naphthalene,
Mhm.
which were not good to burn, but people were still using them in candles. So it's sort of the only way to get the dye. When we started thinking about dyeing beeswax, we looked into it about 5 years ago, and the only place to get it was in Europe that was already thinking about these things. Like, let's only put stuff in our homes that doesn't give us cancer. Like,
Mhm.
let's try that. And then California started to look to Europe for their environmental standards. And then lo and behold, like 4 years ago, I started seeing dye that was vegetable based and not using dangerous distillates. And so I got it from there, and now I can get it on the East Coast. And we use that. Now, I do have friends that make their own.
Uh-huh.
They soak materials in the beeswax, and I love that. But also, it's so time consuming. And so we
Right.
kind of have to meet in the middle and work with a company that does it for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're incredible. And then I also saw that you made a very special Witch Wave purple candle for PM.
Yeah, I don't actually have any on me anymore. We're about to start production actually tomorrow, and I'm just going to be pushing hard for a week. We have about 300 to make,
Wow.
so that's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's from our same company. They have a range of colors, and it is something we would love to expand into
Yeah.
the full spectrum of color, because a lot of people you speak about intention, and people work with ritual and magic, and they have very specific colors for specific things, and we do get that request, and the demand is very high. So I see that as sort of where we're going.
Yeah.
If we get to that point where we're talking about that, that's our goal, is to have a full spectrum and just give people more tools
Yeah.
to use candles as they want to.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to talk to you about before we go is just some candle tips, and how do we take care of these candles, and how do we keep them alive, and how do we
Yeah.
keep them from, withering away or dying or not lighting again. And you've had some beautiful videos about that as well.
Yeah, Candle Care 101. And every time someone buys a candle from us, we give them this little booklet called Wick, Wax, and Flame. And this was co-designed with Fiddler's Green, who's based out of Berkeley, the Bay Area. And that's Clint Marsh and his family, and they're great. And they helped us make this little booklet because this knowledge is really important. A lot of people think a candle is a relatively easy technology. You just light it and then you blow it out. And now that is true with small candles like birthday candles and even tapers. Their diameter is so small that you can light it. The wick has a real easy time pulling in the material, turning it in the fire. You can blow it out, and there's not much of it, so it works in generally pretty well. But when you have a pillar like this, or even this size, one of the things you might notice is if the flame sort of gets weak, there's a couple tips and tricks to make sure that your flame is healthy, your flame size is healthy, and also your wick pull. So one thing you never want to do with beeswax, because it has a high melting point, is blow out the candle.
Okay.
What happens when you blow out the candle is the wick, all the material in the wick starts to smolder, and all the cotton fibers in the wick that actually you need them healthy to pull the material up into the flame, they carbonize, they turn into charcoal. So what you want to do is dip the wick into the flame like that, and there's a lot less smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So you just sort of dip, you use something to push the wick down in, and it's a smokeless way to extinguish the candle. And it also, not only does it keep that material from smoldering, but it sort of gives it a little bit of wax coating so that it's easier to light the next time around. So that's the first tip, is to never blow out your candle, but to dip it. And then the second tip is I'm going to relight this, do what's called hugging. As you can see, we have this lip around the edge of the candle, and this technique is called hugging. And what you want to do is push the outer walls as the wax pull increases, the outer walls get soft. and you push them down and in. And we have examples of this on our
Okay,
Instagram.
perfect.
You just push the wall down and in towards the flame. And so it kind of looks a little bit like a dumpling or something that's folded. And what you do when you do that is you control the flame size. It gets a little bit smaller, and you help with the wax bowl, and you also burn all the material. You're kind of turning the candle inside out.
Got it.
So instead of, some people really like turning their pillars into lanterns, and that's fine, but you also might get to the point where the candle has trouble lighting.
Right.
So we recommend that people do this because they get about 20% more burn time from their candle, and they get to interact with it in this cool way.
It's really fun doing that. It's doing it last night, and my kids are like, "What are you doing?"
Nice. You're like, I'm just hugging the candle.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, "You're playing with fire."
And also, yep. If your wick gets too long, just trim it too.
And how long should the wick be?
You can, in general, anywhere from like around a quarter to a third of an inch.
Okay.
Some people like a really big flame, and I'm not going to argue with that. Just be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Always be careful. And you could do this technique with all candles. It's not just the beeswax.
Yep. Not just beeswax, although with beeswax you really have to, because it has a higher melting point, so it's a little tricky.
Got it.
Wicks can get clogged easily if you blow it out.
Okay, cool. Yay. Well, thank you for that. And then I also have, a few questions here. Wanting to know what's sacred for you right now. Is there anything that you're really like holding tight or you're really connecting with?
Just becoming a father. I just did a post about this, but we did a baby blessing for our boy that we're expecting, and everyone stood in a circle, and Sochi passed out these jasper beads, and people sort of held them with intention. And these were like elders on both sides of the family and kids, and it really touched me in a way. I've never experienced anything like it. And just for my partner to do that for me as a father, and have other dads come out and talk about their experience fathering, it was incredible. So that was a really big spiritual experience that just happened this past Sunday. So I'm really just holding that in my heart, and I'm wearing this talisman that they made me to be ready when baby comes in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
I know I can never truly be ready, but I just feel held.
Yeah,
I feel
supported.
Like held by them. Yeah, supported.
So beautiful. Yes, I saw your post. That was gorgeous. I didn't realize it was for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then if people are curious, we do have an altar back here. It's pretty bare bones, but I come in here and just do a little meditation ritual when I first enter to kind of hold space and clear my head and center before I begin the work, because I think of this as sacred work.
It is. For sure. And, we were just talking about intention, and that was the next question, is like, what's your ritual that you're practicing right now? And I love that you do that every morning or when you come into your studio and you're connecting with that energy and everything is intentional.
Yep. It's specifically, it's the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which sort of comes out of Wicca and a little bit out of ritual magic, some Thelema Crawley stuff. I didn't expect to like that, but I heard it was something you could do relatively quickly. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's pretty short. It could be longer if you want.
Yeah.
And you can just do it every day. And I needed something like that was consistent and relatively short. And
beautiful. Yeah, and showing up for it and holding yourself accountable. That's rad. Anytime we can get that, like all for it.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent, you must know it's like hard to find that time. So
yeah, my mornings are sacred time for sure. I do my walk, a little bit of a meditation, do whatever I can get into that little time frame, and then after that, it's like go time, right? So
awesome.
Yes, and then next question is, and we touched a little bit about this, but what's next for Mithras? I know you talked about, different colors in the candles, but what else do you see coming and expanding if you are in that zone? And
oh, we definitely, we love doing little collaborations. This is a local ceramicist that we collaborate with. We only have one glass vessel that we do, so we love working with other people who use their hands and hand make stuff and doing vessel candles with them. So just a lot. I see more collaborations, like the Witch Wave collaboration. Occult artist Jesse Bransford, who actually carves into the candles. He's going to be doing those sort of really intentional, almost like totemic candles for us on the regular.
Wow.
And we're going to hopefully have a big push for expansion at the end of this year or early next year to try to even to fill out our space with more equipment so we can do more colors. I really would love to do that. So
Yes.
crossing fingers.
Yes. And then how can our listeners get in touch with you? How can they, bring some of these candles into their home and incorporate this ancient fire into their lives?
The best way to reach me is either on Instagram. You can find us. We're at Mithras Candle, Mithras Candle. And we're also at mithrascandle.com. And you can just reach me, Ben, at mithrascandle.com, and I'll get back to you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that you're so approachable. And then people can just connect with you.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, maybe after baby, I'll be like, no more DMs.
Yeah, done.
But right now, yeah. And sometimes depending on what's going on, it might be a few days, but I always try to get back to people within a few days. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your craft and the connection. I love the connection between the science and the ancient wisdom. And I just think that's so cool. I'm always torn in those worlds. So it's beautiful to have somebody else to kind of connect with and live in these.
Yeah, I think more of us need to come out of the closet and just be like, hey, yes, I'm a witch.
And I think there's a lot more people.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah, it's happening.
Yes, I'm feeling it. I'm like, come on, people, let's gather. Because once I start talking to it, especially even with my clients, I'll start saying something, and then they're like, wait, what? And they're like, and they're like, I need all of it. So it's really cool.
Awesome. I love that people are into it.
Yes. And we'll just keep bringing them out and moving forward. All right, Ben. Well, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel.
You've been listening to the Holistic Interior Design Podcast. If it's one that you have been enjoying, please share with anyone else that you think can benefit from this knowledge, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us get seen and found by other new and aspiring interior designers. And if you're looking for mentorship, I invite you to join our club here at the Design Coven. It's a bridge between school and real life interior design. We get in much deeper there. We have virtual and in-person events, so everyone is welcome. You don't need to have a design degree to be part of it, just an interest in holistic interior design. I also want to thank our editor, Marcy Ferry, and lastly, Kinseth Thibodeau, who is our music composer. Until next time, be well, and we will see each other soon.